spined lizard. An apex predator, and a good one at that. The tall neural spines running down its back are what create that beautiful scenic silhouette, although their function remains a bit of a mystery to us. I'd love to go to get a closer look at this particular specimen, but I think I'll stay this side of the fence. Its upper jaw sports 19 razor-sharp teeth, but I don't recommend getting close enough to count them all. They have a great sense of smell, so if you ever find yourself trapped in the Acrocanthosaurus enclosure, and I certainly hope you never do, I don't recommend playing hide and seek. They'll sniff you out before you can clean your trousers. Ah yes, the Torvosaurus, an apex predator of the Jurassic. Its sleek profile made it a formidable foe for even the biggest of prey items. If you want my advice, it's best observed from a safe distance. In its heyday, Torvosaurus was what zoologists would call a cosmopolitan species. Now I know what you're thinking, and no, that does not mean that this dinosaur enjoys delicious fruity cocktails. As it turns out, there were many apex predators in the Jurassic living alongside Torvosaurus. With so many large carnivores in one area competing for the same food, different species must have specialised in different prey. Now this is an interesting fellow. This dinosaur is called Deinocheirus, a name meaning horrible hand. Although it may look intimidating, this animal's diet primarily consisted of fish and plants. A real connoisseur, don't you think? Its hands aren't actually horrible, mind you. Calling dinosaurs things like terrible or horrible is a trend that goes all the way back to Sir Richard Owen, who first coined the term dinosaur, which of course means terrible lizard. There it is, the one and only king of the tyrant lizards. Tyrannosaurus is as big as the movies, and yet somehow even scarier. T-Rex has the most powerful bite force of any land animal on the planet. And if those massive jaws weren't threatening enough, you know it could swallow you and me both in one go. This is a creature of pure instinct, so let's hope it doesn't try to take back its kingdom anytime soon. While your favourite dinosaur movie might have depicted the T-Rex with rather poor vision, brain scans have revealed that its vision rivaled that of modern birds of prey, which means that it's watching you just as much as you're watching it. Eerie stuff. Take a good look at those arms. Each arm is 1 metre long, can hold almost 200 kilos, and ends in razor-sharp claws. Far from the wimpy little stubs most of the public makes them out to be. There it is! Camarasaurus, the star of the Morrison Formation. Fossils of Camarasaurus are some of the most common remains found in the Morrison. Luckily for us, that means we have a wealth of information to work with, including what it ate and even how it laid its eggs. One of the reasons this animal is so common in the fossil record is the sturdiness of its blunt skull. Looking at it more closely, I can sort of see how that could be the case. Wouldn't you agree? Don't let its peculiar mouth scare you. The long chisel-like teeth may look like a carnivore's, but they are actually much better adapted to rip coarse leaves from tree branches. Although to be fair, we haven't really put the theory to the test. Can't get a much more classic dinosaur than Brachiosaurus. This is the iconic high-browsing sauropod, feeding on nutritious leaves and branches way up in the trees. These beautiful creatures can eat around 400 kilograms per day, so I better go check to see if our latest food delivery arrived on time. If not, we might have a bit of a problem. Look at the size of this magnificent animal. The way it moves about, with the grace fit for a giant. It's a real privilege to be able to cherish these beautiful creatures. Now, I've seen skeletons of Argentinosaurus before, but nothing can prepare you for the sheer immensity of this dinosaur in the flesh. These titanic sauropods, fittingly called titanosaurs, grow rapidly. Once they reach a certain size, they're virtually untouchable and have nothing to fear from puny apex predators. Hungry guests, though, let's hope we don't find out. A single vertebrae from the back of this animal could be over 1.5 meters tall. Hatchlings are absolutely puny by comparison. Without the protection of enormity, young Argentinosaurus are extremely vulnerable, so adults compensate by having as many babies as possible to increase the chances that one of them will reach adulthood. Quantity over quality. A Dryosaurus. Quite elegant, don't you think? They're especially cute as babies when they have big eyes and stubby noses, just like a puppy. Only juvenile specimens of these dinosaurs have been found in the fossil record, so I'm eager to see how much larger this one will get. They originally inhabited forested areas of the late Jurassic, with their name literally translating to tree lizard. I wonder if they bark. Iguanodon, one of the first dinosaurs to be formally named. Reconstructions of this animal have changed dramatically over the years, from a giant rhinoceros-like reptilian beast to the beautiful animal you see before you now. It really makes you wonder, what will paleontologists discover next to fundamentally change the way we view other dinosaurs? This creature's restorations weren't always perfect, though. See those thumb spikes? They were once thought to be nasal horns, sort of like an iguana's. Very wrong, of course, but A+ for name inspiration. Iguanodon is also one of the first dinosaurs to be sculpted. The original sculptures can still be seen in Crystal Palace Park in London. The artist behind the sculptures, Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins, famously hosted an 8-course dinner inside one of the incomplete sculptures on New Year's Eve, 1853. How's that for a party? Now that, my friend, is a beautiful dinosaur. Almost like a musical instrument, Parasaurolophus used their crest for long-distance communication. They didn't use their tube-shaped crest as a snorkel, contrary to previous hypotheses. Nevertheless, I quite like the mental image of a Parasaurolophus going snorkeling. There's been simulations in the past that tried to reconstruct how they could have sounded, but nothing quite compares to the real thing. Crests are made out of bone riddled with hollow tubes, which help amplify that beautiful singing voice of theirs. You're listening to the first orchestra on Earth. Found all over Western North America, Edmontosaurus is the textbook definition of a hadrosaur. Although it doesn't have a magnificent bony crest like its more famous relatives, some Edmontosaurus sport their own flashy headgear in the form of a comb made entirely from soft tissue. Hadrosaurs are commonly referred to as duck-billed dinosaurs, but don't let that catchy moniker fool you. These dinosaurs lived on land, not in water. They're one of the most well-studied animals in the fossil record, providing us with a wealth of insight into how they ate, socialized, and survived. Lambeosaurus, a crested hadrosaur from the late Cretaceous. In my opinion, the most interesting thing about hadrosaurs isn't the presence or absence of a crest, but the way they move. They're able to walk as bipeds or quadrupeds as the situation demands, a rare feature in the animal kingdom. As of its kind, it uses its unique hatchet-shaped crest as a sort of resonating chamber. Though not essential, it's also great at giving a thumbs up. Hadrosaurs are commonly called duck-billed dinosaurs, after the toothless beak at the front of their mouths. But they aren't completely toothless. Behind the beak are dense concentrations of teeth that are continually replaced, sort of like a shark. If sharks were cows, that is. This little fella is a Psittacosaurus. Just like other ceratopsians, Psittacosaurus is a herbivore, but its sharp beak and simple jaws are better suited to tough plant material such as nuts or seed. A word of advice though, be wary of that beak. They're a little nippy. Thanks to a number of recent findings, we were able to restore this creature to a high degree of genetic accuracy, right down to the quills and coloration in some of its species. Just looking at its face, you might not realise that this was one of the first ceratopsians. It may lack a frill and forward-projecting horns, but you can still see the resemblance in its strong beak and its cheek horns. Protoceratops. This animal is one of the smaller species of ceratopsians, living alongside deadly neighbours like the Velociraptor. Oddly enough, this animal lacks a lot of the more complex facial features seen in larger family members, like a certain three-horned celebrity. I guess that's important if you're trying to avoid speedy thieves like Velociraptor. This fossil preserves a Protoceratops and a Velociraptor locked in battle. I know that look in your eyes. I don't care if it's in the name of science. Don't put the two species together. We don't need to deal with another ethics violation. Wow, look at the horns on that one. This must be Nasutoceratops, a ceratopsian best identified by its large cow-like features. This massive creature weighs approximately 1.5 tons. To put that into perspective, a mature Spanish fighting bull can weigh up to 0.7 tons. Imagine setting that loose on the streets of Pamplona in Spain. Much like a rhino or, well, a cow, its horns are sheathed in keratin, the same material that makes up scales, feathers, fingernails, and even hair. That huge head can grow 1.5 meters long from tip to tip. That's 1/3 of its body length. With a head like that, we must be looking at Styracosaurus. Styracosaurus belongs to a group of ceratopsians called centrosaurines, which tend to have longer nasal horns, shorter brow horns, and spiny frills. The famous Triceratops, in contrast, belongs to the chasmosaurines, which instead favour longer brow horns and long, simple frills. The purpose of these gorgeous frills has long vexed paleontologists. Were they primarily for display, temperature regulation, or neck protection? Now that we have one in the flesh, hopefully we can solve this mystery once and for all. Fossil record shows a bone bed of what was assumed to be a herd of these animals. But from what I've found, they're far more antisocial than expected. Perhaps a result of modern climatic conditions or irregularities in the genome. I'll leave that up for you to decide. Ah, a Pachyrhinosaurus. My, that head looks heavy. Thankfully, the frill extending off the back of its head is hiding a secret. There are two large holes punched straight through the bone to relieve the weight of all those adornments. The holes aren't visible during life. As you can see, they're beneath all that skin and keratin. There are two large holes punched straight through the bone to relieve the weight of all those adornments. I've been told that these dinosaurs are quite bossy. Instead of a nasal horn, Pachyrhinosaurus sports an overgrown mass of bone called a nasal boss above its eyes and nose. It certainly lives up to its name, the thick-nosed lizard. There are 3 species contained within the genus Pachyrhinosaurus, each with their own unique facial characteristics. Triceratops, one of the most recognisable and largest dinosaurs of its kind. Just think, this species was completely eradicated in a mass extinction that killed 3/4 of the species on Earth. And 66 million years later, it has the chance to walk the Earth once again. We're witnessing something truly remarkable. Several fossilised Triceratops have been given nicknames, like Lane, Hatcher or Homer. Personally, I prefer names starting with T. Having lived alongside predators like the T-Rex, those giant horns start to make a lot more sense. Now, let's not mix the two together. At last, the woolly mammoth, ruler of the Ice Age, then ruler of none. There's nothing quite like it on the planet today. These majestic elephants are beautifully adapted for cold environments. Their key adaptations are small ears and a thick coat of fur. It's imperative we give them the best acclimation possible, or else we might have to give the herd a haircut. To be easy caring for these elephants, but luckily there's a lot of research we can reference as we try to keep them fit and healthy. They represent so much of what we've set out to do, so we can't disappoint the world now. Just like their closest elephant cousins, mammoths are highly social, forming large family groups led by matriarchs. So that means we need to make sure we give them enough company. I would hate to see them feel lonely. This handsome little fella is one of my personal favourites, the Microrapto. Those tufts on its hind legs are not stylish trousers, they're actually flight feathers. With 4 wings full of delicate but vital flight feathers, these creatures have to be careful not to drag them on the ground and cause permanent damage. I always wanted to hand feed one, but I don't want to chance one of these feisty creatures mistaking my finger for a tasty lizard. Actually, I just need my old falconry gloves. That beautiful iridescent colour of its feathers isn't actually pigment. It's a structural colour, which means that the structure of the feather itself reflects light in such a way that it's perceived as a colour. Hummingbirds do the same thing today. This is an Archaeopteryx. Its fossil was one of the most important scientific discoveries ever made. Not only was it the first feathered dinosaur found, but we now know its colours were mostly black and white, much like a magpie. Name means ancient wing, not to be confused with the similarly named Paleozoic tree Archaeopteryx, which means ancient fern. The distinction, of course, is quite important. In addition to its obvious bird-like traits, it also sported many traditional dinosaur features, such as sharp teeth, a bony tail, and a killing claw, similar to its distant relative, the Velociraptor. Oh boy, that's a big kitty, more commonly known as the saber-toothed tiger. Smilodon makes for a formidable predator. Many of its fossils have been excavated in tar pits, with the most prolific site being La Brea in Los Angeles, California. More than a staggering 166,000 specimens of Smilodon have been found in these sediments alone. What may have been terrible death traps in the past make for great opportunities in the present as we bring this carnivore back to. This large feline could gape its mouth to impressive extents, up to 120 degrees, almost twice as much as a lion. I would love to see it in action from a safe distance. Despite the looks, Smilodon isn't closely related to any modern cats. It's more accurately called a Microrapto, although I wouldn't worry too much about making the distinction. Just try to keep those saber teeth away from the guests. The woolly rhino, or Coalodonta, is a relative to the modern-day Sumatran rhino. Not unlike modern species, this rhinoceros sports two horns on its face. A key difference to note, however, is its unusual flattened shape. That's truly unique among its peers. Our ancient ancestors were very familiar with these beasts and illustrated them in cave paintings on several occasions. It's not hard to see why. They're remarkably handsome, don't you think? Much like its contemporary, the woolly mammoth, this rhino inhabited what is now called the Mammoth Steppe, a vast cold grassland that extended from Western Europe to the most remote corners of Siberia. By bringing this animal back to life, we honour that wonderfully diverse ecosystem, now lost to the ages.